This is the Sales Babble Podcast, episode 216, Debunking Sales Myths, an interview with Mike Schultz.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers, and today we're going to meet Mike Schultz. Mike's the president of the Rain Group, and they just did a fascinating study on prospecting. Now, this idea of finding leads and turning those leads into an appointment is probably one of the biggest challenges that sellers make. In fact, right now at this moment, you're probably wondering and wishing, how can I find more leads? Well, Mike decided to dig into that. I was fascinated by what they found. Most sellers say it is impossible to get an appointment. But what Mike says, that's a myth, and he debunks it and shows us in this study. Can't wait to share it with you. So, with no further ado, let's get to it. Welcome, Mike. Are you ready to babble?
I would want to do nothing else but babble here on a lovely Wednesday afternoon.
Yes, it is a lovely Wednesday, and it's actually quite chilly here, which is odd for the middle of April. I'm not sure when we'll publish this, but it's been a chilly year here in Chicagoland. Mike, you're the president of the Rain Group, and it was recently brought to my attention that you have just completed some research on sales prospecting, and in that research, you debunk some common myths, right?
Well, we like to think we've done a little bit of debunking. At least we have found data to suggest that what a lot of us in the sales punditry world have said about prospecting might not necessarily be the best advice for people, or at least for the many, many buyers and sellers that we studied, what's working for them is actually not what some of these pundits say. So I think it certainly will add to the argument, if nothing else.
So why did you focus? Why'd you guys focus on prospecting? You know, there's many angles when it comes to sales. Why prospecting?
Well, we cover lots of angles when it comes to sales. So I run the Rain Group, and as you noted, we focus on sales training and performance improvement. But I actually don't end up going out into the field that much, especially recently now that we have people around the world leading our client engagements and delivering. I spend most of my time running the Rain Group Center for Sales Research. So we have researched major purchases and why buyers have chosen one seller over another. We have researched top performance and strategic account management. We've researched pricing. We've researched all sorts of different things around the world of sales. And the reason we wanted to focus on prospecting is we want to dive into the areas where things are changing and people don't agree, because we're looking for answers. That's why we do research. So I think prospecting has changed more in the last 5 or 10 years than any part of sales, and sales has been changing quite a bit just in and of itself. I mean, if you think about it, I've been in this world for closing in on 20 years, and I started off prospecting. And when I did, it was me, a phone, a large directory, a ruler to be able to slide my so my eye could stay on the right lines, and a quiet clock ticking. Now there's
by the way, I used a felt tip marker.
A felt tip marker. Well, you were pretty high tech compared to me. A felt tip marker and a T-square. Yeah. Well, now it's not just the phone, and if we're being fancy, we do a couple of letters in the mail, call. You have the phone, you have the internet, you have email, you have LinkedIn, you have personal brands that you need to build that you've never had to build before. You have multiple layers of interaction that might happen before you actually catch someone. A lot of people are saying cold calling's dead. Cold calling's not dead. It's all about LinkedIn. If you're a busy social media superstar, you're going to get 5 times as many more meetings. If. Oh, geez, actually, cold calling is not just cold calling is dead, but any outbound is dead. You have to do all inbound. And well, what's a guy that's going to generate a pipeline going to do? Because there's so many different kinds of conflicting pieces of advice. So we decided to study it from the buyer side and the seller side. We talked to 488 buyers. When I say buyers, I don't mean purchasing department. I mean business leaders who buy things, about what it's like being sold to all day. Do you take meetings? Don't you take meetings? If you take meetings, what does the seller have to do to impress you? Versus if you dismiss them right when they interact with you, what do they do to turn you off? And we also talked to 489 sellers that either part-time or full-time prospect. What's it like selling all day? What are you doing? What kind of results do you get? And then we did a comparison of both and a regression analysis of the sellers to create a top performance model of what the sellers that get better results today, right now in 2018 in prospecting, what are they doing differently from the folks that aren't getting as many meetings, aren't achieving quality outcomes in those meetings, and don't think that their prospecting success is very good. So it was pretty fascinating, and we found some fun stuff.
So I'm really excited. I want to hear, what did you find?
What do we find? Well, let's think some big picture stuff. There has been a lot of research in the last few years to say buyers don't need sellers to talk about their capabilities. Buyers don't even want to talk to sellers at all. They're doing more and more of their purchase decision online and internally because they have research sources. Corporate executive board said 57% of the purchase decision is done before a customer calls a supplier.
That's an old. Oh yeah, that's the study everybody throws around.
And that's the one. And Serious Decisions recently said that 67% of the buyer's journey is now done digitally. So what we found is, so what? As a matter of fact, when we talk to sellers, they say, "Oh, geez, well the buyers are doing everything online and they don't need me anymore." And they don't want to hear about capabilities. Well, so we asked the buyers, when do you want to talk to sellers? And we gave them a buying cycle, everything from when they're defining their vision for what to actually do and what future to chase or what problem to solve, to when they're doing analysis on what's the cause of this, so how should I fix it, to then more of that executing the purchase. I want to start evaluating providers and figuring out exactly what to do and getting quotes and selecting them. When do you want to talk to the sellers? The time that buyers want to talk to sellers is the earliest part of the sales cycle in their buying cycle. 71% of the buyers who accept meetings said they wanted to talk to sellers when they're looking for new ideas and possibilities to drive stronger results to improve my business. So yeah, they can read online and they can do some buying journey online. But when we talked to the buyers, they said, what do you think? I'm sitting there reading everyone's websites? I might do a couple of Google searches, but I still don't know what to do. I still don't know what's possible. I still don't have any context. I want to talk to people who have gone through this, who knows what works and what doesn't, so I can get a sense of whether or not it's going to work here, whether I trust them, whether I don't trust them. And the point is they wanted to talk to sellers at the earliest possible time in the buy cycle. So those statistics, while they may be true, they are they're useless. They're not worth talking about. I mean, here I am talking about them, saying they're not worth talking about, but so what?
There's so much data out there. I'm not surprised that these buyers need a concierge of sorts to walk them through all this information.
Yeah, it's like the Barry Schwartz book, The Paradox of Choice. There was a study about salsa, and consumers like to go to the store and buy salsa. And there was a supermarket owner that said, we have 4 varieties of salsa, but I'm going to increase my salsa aisle and I'm going to have more salsa at different levels and different varieties and different brands. And their overall salsa sales went down. Why did they go down? They went down because there was more choice for the consumer, and because there was more choice, there was more indecision, and they went and bought guacamole. So, or they bought nothing.
See, that's so interesting. So choice isn't everything everybody says it's cracked up to be.
Yeah, well, at least it's not what Barry Schwartz, the researcher who studied choice, says it's cracked up to be. That, back in the old days, I remember when you wanted to find out things about sellers, you had to go to a conference. And the buyers at the conference would walk around with 2 canvas bags that they shoved all the brochures in. Well, we don't need brochures anymore. And if you could actually find a provider that did this or that, those were your only 2 choices, your 3 choices. It was hard to find others. Well, now there's literally hundreds of providers that can operate for services and products across all geographies, which was never the case in the past. You had to work with people in your own geography. Now geography doesn't even matter. We have hundreds of providers we can work with in a variety of different areas. And so I think that there's more indecision. There's more information, but there's less insight. People are just confused. And so the human interaction, if the human interaction is high quality, is that much more important now than it ever was.
So if they want to talk to a seller early on, how am I going to get in contact with them? Am I going to cold call them?
If a buyer wants to get in contact with a seller?
Yeah, if buyers want to be in contact with sellers early on, right? Mm-hmm. So they can make wise and prudent decisions. How is the seller supposed to get in contact with these people?
Well, they can't read minds. The buyers are out there wanting to talk to people, but the sellers don't know who it is. So you still have to create a portfolio of people that you want to talk to, a target list, so to speak, and have a meaningful reason to reach out to them. And I don't necessarily mean meaningful for the seller. I mean meaningful for the buyer. So what we found, and I'll give you the core fundamental 4 things that we found. And it boils down to the word wave. The first thing that the sellers that were really good at prospecting did is they had a winner's mindset. We wanted to know, was it the mental game of prospecting, or was it the tactical execution of prospecting that was difficult? Because if you look at prospecting training, most prospecting training is how to call, how to email, how to reach out, what to say, how to deal with buyers who are trying to push you off. It's all tactics. It's probably 95% tactics. I'm going to suggest that prospecting training has to change radically to focus on the mindset of the seller and as well their ability to execute. I'll talk about that in a minute. But the first part is the mindset.
Absolutely.
The second part, the sellers that had the most success, they created what we call an attraction campaign. It wasn't just, hi, my name is Mike Schultz. I'm with ABC Company. The reason I'm calling is because we've been able to help companies like ABC get results such as 1, 2, 3. And if I could have 20 minutes of your valuable time, I will talk to you about my capabilities. That's not necessarily the outreach approach. And it's not just one call. And it's not about just boiling it right down to something like that. And buyers, don't have that information. So they'll take those calls. There's a multi-step, multi-pronged, multimodal approach that the sellers that are succeeding are using to reach out to and connect with buyers. Most sellers give up after about 3 attempts, and we found that the average number of attempts it takes to get a meeting was about 8.
Yep.
Third thing was that there was value in every touch. And value is one of those consultant words that has different meanings to different people, and it sounds like fluff. But it's essentially, if you reach out to them, is there something that they say, wow, that could be worthwhile? If you can answer that question for the buyer, that could be worthwhile, then you're much more highly likely to get a meeting. But humans are self-focused, and they can't focus on the other person. But when you can craft a series of messages and series of offers that the buyer will find interesting, then you're going to get more meetings. And the last part is execution. There are 2 parts of execution. One, all the tactical parts. If somebody says, I'm sorry, man, I don't have time to talk right now, do you just wilt like some lettuce that's been left out in the heat? Or do you do something about that and potentially turn it around? So there's the skill part. And the other part of execution is literally people's executive functioning skills. I mentioned when I got started in prospecting, it was quiet. It was me, the phone, and a book. And tick, tick, tick of the clock. And I could concentrate. Well, now I have Facebook, LinkedIn, email, Slack, just the internet, YouTube, puppy videos. I have messages coming at me all the time. I could react and react and react. And if I had a 4-hour block, I might lose that 4 hours reacting to other things and literally not prospect. But people's ability to concentrate has completely changed, and their ability to do things proactively has completely changed. And people need to train themselves to be able to choose an activity and focus on it to the exclusion of other things. And prospecting is probably the hardest thing to do there when it comes to sales. And those sellers that had better time management, focus, and executive functioning skills were much more successful than those that didn't rate highly on those kinds of skills. So the word was WAVE: winner's mindset, attraction campaign, value, and execution. You do those 4 things, you're going to kill it.
Wow. What other things did you find in the study that surprised you?
Oh, let's see. Things that surprised me. Well, I don't necessarily know if I was surprised, but how often do we see the article "Cold Calling is Dead"? It's one of the most popular article titles. I saw "Cold Calling is Dead" posted on LinkedIn, and everyone was chiming in and commenting and all that. Well, according to buyers, how do they prefer to be contacted? Well, more than 50% of buyers prefer to be contacted by the telephone. It was second only to email. But there was LinkedIn, conferences, presentations, direct mail, text messages, voicemails, other social media kinds of things. They were all below phone call. So if you're going to call 10 people, 5 of them don't mind that you're calling. And of course, they expect you to email as well, and you should. But the phone is not dead. When we talk to buyers about whether or not they accepted a meeting from sellers, something like 57% of them had the seller reach out to them on the phone as a part of connecting with them. So they want people to use the phone. So cold calling isn't dead. Outreach is not dead. And you should be doing it. So there's the phone. As a matter of fact, 3 of the top 5 seller techniques that they said worked really well for them was telephone. And the first one was telephone calls to existing accounts.
Oh, yeah.
So if you know the people, pick up the phone. Don't just email them. Say hello, leave a message, have your message ready for why you want to talk with them again. But the phone really works pretty well, and it works pretty well. It's in that top 5 of just phone calls to people that I'm reaching out to the first time. So there's cold calling.
And number 2 was email?
Well, number 1 was email in terms of how buyers prefer to be contacted, and number 2 was phone call.
Oh, number 1 was email. Number 2 was phone call. Okay.
Yeah, but it's not like number 7 was phone call, and it's not like there was a big drop off with phone call. It's you got Larry Bird and Kevin McHale there. It's not like you have Larry Bird and someone that retired 10 years ago.
Right.
Well, I guess they both retired 20 years ago, but you know what I mean.
And actually, if you read a lot of those articles about cold calling's dead, actually dig into it. It's really what they rebranded as warm calling. Like, I reached out to them on LinkedIn. I sent them an email. I mailed them a postcard.
But the actual telephone is fine still, and a lot of those people are trying to sell something else. We really don't have a dog in the hunt of something to sell because we just wanted to find out the right answer. We can find out the right answer, and we can adjust what we bring out to our clients to make sure it matches the right answer. So we didn't have a dog in the hunt of what we found, and we found the phone's fine.
Was there anything else in the study in your research that you found surprising or worth mentioning?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton worth mentioning, but if I think about the things that were surprising, of the 488 buyers, I thought it was pretty interesting how many of them accept a meeting with sellers at least sometimes, which means that their mind is open. If they accept a meeting at least sometimes, it means their mind is open to accepting a meeting if the seller does the right things. 82% of buyers take meetings and take meetings with sellers that they don't know. Oh, it's impossible to get through, and I'm never going to get a meeting, and I reach out, and I don't actually get any meetings. Yeah, well, you know what? I tried to bake a cake last weekend. And I'm not much of a baker, but I pulled out the recipe, and I followed the directions, and I poured all the flour in, and I grabbed the yeast, and I did the eggs, and I put it all together, and I put it in the mold, and I put it in the oven. And I set it at 350 for 45 minutes. The cake was supposed to rise, but it didn't rise. So cakes don't rise. Of course cakes rise. I just don't know how to bake. So a lot of people are complaining, oh, you can't get through anymore. They just don't know how. They're not trying hard enough. Or they just don't have the chops and the skills.
Well, so I think it goes back to the A in your WAVE recommendation, that they haven't built a process of, what do we have here, a multi-step approach, where you're building an email campaign or a social media campaign and an email and then building upon that maybe a phone call strategy or a snail mail strategy or whatever.
Mm-hmm. So we studied 15 factors for reasons that buyers connect with the seller, and the majority of them the seller controls. The seller doesn't necessarily control whether or not the buyer, the number one was the buyer's perception that they need the product or service now in the future. But a lot of times they do need it. They just don't know that they currently have a budget. Well, sellers often help create budgets. It's the buyer that needs inspiration to want to do something, and they'll say, okay, over the course of the next 3 months, I want to see if I can pull money in for it. The third one, 63% of buyers said they were highly influenced by whether or not a seller did this, was just the provider offers to share something of value. The seller can control that. If you want a meeting, have a good offer. The seller can also control that I've heard of the provider's company, because it's not just about marketing. If you run that attraction campaign, like you said, you can create your own brand awareness over the course of 6 months by touching them yourself. So there's a lot of things that sellers can control for actually getting through when they think that all of the control is in with the buyers. That was an interesting one. I'll give you another interesting one, but go ahead.
No, keep going.
So I mentioned before that, buyers don't necessarily want to hear about your capabilities. Well, I wouldn't lead with them exclusively, but as a matter of fact, they do. So we studied a series of content that influences buyers to accept a meeting or otherwise connect. The number one piece of content that buyers were interested in hearing about was primary research data relevant to our business. That was number one. 69% of the buyers said that they were influenced by that. Number two was descriptions of the provider's capabilities. So I wouldn't lead with it exclusively, but it was number two out of 12 or so here as I'm looking at my list. And number three was content 100% customized to our specific situation. I run a small company. It's a real company. I mean, we have offices in Boston, Geneva, London, Mumbai, Sydney, Johannesburg, Toronto, and Bogota. But it's not a billion-dollar conglomerate. But I'm on the website as the president of this company with offices around the globe. I get sold to, 2, 3, 4 times a day on average. And I would say 90% of it is mass customized spam. It's some kind of mail merge. They don't look me up on LinkedIn. They don't mention the company name. And if they do, it's a mail merge. They don't actually write to me. And when they do, it's much more impressive. But buyers actually want to hear about capabilities as well. Let me do one more surprising one, and then we can keep talking. So a lot of people complain that cold meetings don't convert to sales wins. We actually found that cold meetings, if you have this strongly value-driven approach, are much more likely to turn into strong pipeline opportunities and wins. And the buyers said that when the sellers focused on the value they could deliver to them, 96% of them said that was influential of whether or not they eventually purchased. Versus pitching a product or just doing a demo. Whether the seller was collaborative, whether they educated the buyer with new ideas and perspectives, and whether they deepened the buyer's understanding of needs, all of those were above 90% in terms of how much they influence whether the buyer eventually purchased.
Yeah, I agree with that. But
sellers aren't that good.
I don't think that's a surprise, though. I think that's something we have known for a while. Yeah.
The buyers actually said that 58% of the buyers said that sales meetings, by and large, were not valuable to them, which is a huge opportunity because only 42% of them said, by and large, they are valuable. That doesn't necessarily means if we lined up 100 salespeople, 58% of them are not impressive. If we could make a higher percent of them impressive at our companies, then buyers would find them a lot more valuable and they'd end up buying more things.
It says, too, that half of your competitors are incompetent.
Mm-hmm.
So you can beat them.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I mean, I think a lot of times, we hear that, we talked to several providers, but this is the first really great conversation we've had. The providers might actually look similar on their websites. They might even have different offerings, but the buyers tend to perceive that certain sellers and vendors are largely interchangeable. The things that aren't interchangeable is how good the people are. And that is something that we can control.
Yeah. So if you could give our listeners, Mike, one piece of advice that they can go and take action on today, what would that be?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to say that the thing that we found that most diminished prospecting success was not doing it. Or dipping your toe in the water to say, I'm going to go get good at golf. If I can get good at golf, I can really play with the best of them out there. And then you hit a half a bucket of balls, say I suck, and then go home. That's not going to work. prospecting takes practice and help to get good at for most people. Not everyone can just grab a club and hit it 250 yards down the middle of the fairway. So if you want to commit to prospecting success, you have to obsess over it. You have to make it 100% of your focus. You have to wake up and decide not, oh, I got to prospect for an hour today, but you need to attack it like you're going to make it work. And if you do that, you're likely to make it work. The skills will sort out. You'll learn things about attraction campaigns. You'll start to read and study and understand what buyers actually value, and you will get through enough to take your lumps and then also find out what works. But if you don't execute, and you don't do it, and you don't concentrate, and you don't obsess, you're going nowhere.
Excellent. Mike, how can people find you online?
They can find us by going to raingroup.com, www.rain, rain like the weather, raingroup.com. And for your listeners today, we have a public version of the report. But if somebody wants the full report, they can actually just send me an email directly, and I'll make sure it gets out to them. It's mschultz, that's MSCHULTZ @raingroup.com. Again, mschultz, MSCHULTZ @raingroup.com, and I will get you a copy of our typically client-only full research report.
Excellent, excellent, Mike. This has been enlightening.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
This has been really, really great because this is a lot of good. This is a lot of really, really great advice based on data.
It is at least what a thousand or so collective buyers and sellers had to say about what's actually working for them. So we did our best to sort out the meaning and the message of what they had, and I hope that it's worthwhile for folks to take it and run with it.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. Thanks for visiting us here in Sales Babble.
It's great to be here.
Wasn't that interesting stuff? Maybe I'm a geek about sales. Well, I know I am a geek about sales. But when it comes to data like this, I can't help but be fascinated. So one more time, let's walk through Mike's WAVE process, where it starts with having a winner mindset, building an attraction campaign, having value in every touch, and then execution, which is the tactic of keep following up. I think what the big takeaway of this whole conversation, that no, you're not going to cold call somebody. They're going to answer the first or second time. They're immediately going to agree to a meeting, and then you're going to close them at that meeting. The big takeaway here is that it's going to take time to warm these people up. And the tools that you're going to use in part of this campaign is, having a branding, having them see advertisements for you online or postings on social media, LinkedIn or whatnot, having an email campaign that slowly shares a little bit about them, that provides them value, each piece of information that they get from you, so that you're seen as a credible person, that your company is seen as a credible company, and the product or service that you're providing is credible too. I know that this is a big ask for you. I know. But there's just so much information out there on the internet. This is what it's going to take for you to differentiate yourself from all the competition. To get a copy of the report, go to the show notes at www.salesbabble.com/216. That's 216. And right there's a link so that you can get a copy of it. Or if you would like to get an even deeper analysis, you can contact Mike Schultz by sending him an email, which is also there right in the show notes. I think it's just fascinating that a lot of people dislike the telephone, but most buyers tell us that it's the phone is where people contact them, and it's the phone where they agree to purchase stuff from people. So the phone is not your enemy, it is your friend. If you got a question, got a comment, don't hesitate to reach out and contact me. Go to the homepage at salesbabble.com and click on the Babble Me button, and it will come right to me. It'll send me an email. Send me an email. Maybe you're struggling with something. Maybe you're not too sure what to do. A lot of sales babblers have been reaching out to me, and it's been a ton of fun helping them with their problems. While you are on that website, you can find our back catalog with archives on prospecting and cold calling and presenting and closing. It is all there for you to listen. You can dig into whatever problem that you're facing today. That's all I got for today. So take care and have a highly successful and profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.